Welcome to the Following On podcast. I'm Jarrod Kimber. I'm here with Saurabh Somani on the talkSPORT YouTube cricket channel. Let's start with this. Travis Head, Saurabh, he seems to like playing against India a little bit, doesn't he?
I mean, he does. Are they planning to have cricket with another colored ball? Because he scored a century with them, red ball, white ball, now pink ball. If they play tennis ball cricket, he's going to score a century there too. Yeah, he just loves it. And India helped him get there, didn't they, with those two dropped catches?
Which, I thought the commentators were quite harsh on Mohammed Siraj. We both know he can't field, so why they had him at mid-off and mid-on, where I thought the catch was most likely to come, I thought was a mistake by India in that position. And the other thing that I would have said is that, like, it was swirling around a little bit. The Rishabh Pant one is more interesting because we don't know if he could have caught that or not because he didn't go for it.
And I think his weight was on the wrong foot, so he just couldn't, move quickly enough for it. Who knows? But Rishabh Pant, we have seen him do this. He takes a lot of acrobatic and spectacular catches, but that's also sometimes because he hasn't moved quickly enough. And this time it came back to bite India.
But Travis Head, completely dominant. I mean, a lot of things went in his favour. You talk about the two misses, which obviously was a huge help, but also Australia got past the new ball. Bumrah was rested. The lights weren't on. Like, there were a lot of things in his favour. I'm not taking away from his innings. It's just that's what happened.
No, I mean, there were those things would still pale, I think, in comparison to how he played. There's a good argument to make that he would have scored a lot of runs anyway. Because some of the shots, some of the hand speed, and I don't know how he sort of opened himself out and hit, and how he just picks it up very early, doesn't he? He just and he gets into positions where his balance is really good and his hands are astounding. His eye is excellent, and he just picks them off, and he just likes India.
Yeah, it's his transformation from a player who was vice captain and then was dropped while he was vice captain, and we weren't even sure if he would come back, let alone doing what he is now. It's absolutely incredible. What about the Bumrah situation? I find this really interesting. Two things happened today. At one stage, everyone was saying, "Where's Bumrah? Where's Bumrah? Why aren't they bowling Bumrah more? They should bowl Bumrah more." And then suddenly, Bumrah is on the floor, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, does this mean Bumrah's out of the series?" And people don't understand that both of those things are linked. India are trying to bowl him as much as possible without bowling him too much. And that means there are going to be big periods where he doesn't bowl all that much. But he still ended up with a healthy amount of overs. It wasn't like he was under-bowled.
Yeah, he definitely wasn't under-bowled. And I don't know what was shown on your feed, Jarrod, when Bumrah went down and he was being worked on by the physio. But on the feed that I was getting, there was complete silence. And I think that was because there were like about 50 lakh heartbeats stopped at that time, which is the amount of people I assume were watching. Because if Bumrah is out, then and so early, then there's a lot of world of trouble and hurt for India. Because Mohammed Shami apparently is not going to come back anytime soon. He might not even be back in time for the final test. But the final test seems like the most optimistic scenario right now. So India need Bumrah more than ever. But he wasn't underbowled. I think he bowled 1 or 2 overs less than Siraj, who bowled the maximum in the innings. So there's no way Bumrah was underbowled. He was just... you have to use him judiciously, right? You can't... I mean, Rohit Sharma knows this. Anybody who has Bumrah in his attack knows that Bumrah is an ace you have. But that doesn't mean that you just keep bowling him. You know that Bumrah is going to be your best bowler. You have to just pick and choose your moments.
Yeah, I think the people who say that kind of want him to bowl like 30% of the overs like he's Murali or something, right? And it's like, well, that's not how these things work. He's not going to be able to do that. I think what happened today was there was a special circumstance where they knew that they wanted to use him straight up front, but then they were a little bit worried about the second new ball and when that was going to be available. So you could make an argument that India paused him longer than they should have because they were worried about the second new ball. But he was going to bowl just after the start of play. He got them back into the game a little bit. He then bowls straight after lunch, right? And has another spell where I think Ashwin ended up getting the wicket, but still the pressure was there. And then he bowled straight after new ball. Like, it was very clear that they had a plan with him. I think there's this whole idea of like, Rohit doesn't even know how to captain Jasprit Bumrah anymore. And it's like, no, guys, that's not what's happening here. Yeah. What is happening here is that you cannot bowl him all the time. He is not being under-bowled.
Yeah, he's not. And I agree with you completely that there was a period where there was a bit of a pause, but that was because the second new ball was coming. It was around the 70 over mark when you thought maybe Bumrah should come back. But then the ball is 70 overs old. You don't want him coming back now because you want him to have the new ball in hand. So you have to wait for 10 overs. And that's where I guess, India lacked the support around him, which you were talking about yesterday. Although it turned out to be Harshit Rana more than Siraj. But Harshit Rana, let's not be too harsh on him. This was his sixth day as a test cricketer. So it's not like he's and he's 21 or something. So yeah, it could happen that you aren't the complete finished product at that age. But that's what that period I think also hurt India because Travis Head really went after them at that time.
Well, it's doubled down by the fact that they clearly made a decision which probably made sense at the time, but because Travis Head scores at such a rate, and maybe they were thinking, well, Head isn't scoring that quick. We've got Ashwin, and Ashwin might be able to get him out as well. It just didn't work, right? And to be honest, they should have got him out. They had those two chances. So if that happens, India's plan is fine, and then Bumrah comes back after lunch and perhaps gets India into a good position in this game. None of that happened. I just want to talk about Siraj for a moment, though. There's been a lot of graphics on the screen about India's bowlers versus Bumrah's average in this series so far. And don't get me wrong, I've done it for my live show as well. Like, it makes sense and it's funny and it looks good. But Siraj is averaging under 20 in this series so far. And he looked, considering the position they were in the game, he looked pretty fired up out there to me. And he hasn't looked as good a rhythm as he was in Perth, but he's found it a couple of times. I would say he found it at the second part of his spell in the morning. I thought he bowled really well, just didn't break through. And then obviously with the second new ball where he looked really good.
Yes. I agree with you. I think he did look good. It's just that he has these phases in the same innings where some of the spells are not so sharpish and some are beautiful. Siraj bowling in top flight mode, and it's easy to focus on those, especially because the spells that are good also, they are not always going to stand out because he's bowling in a team that has Jasprit Bumrah in it, so he's not going to be the complete star bowler in any innings, or it's going to happen very few times. So I think that's why his bad spells stand out more. But yeah, we need to give him a break. Maybe he should ease off on the send-offs, but otherwise it was all good.
That was a bad send-off. I mean, Scott Boland did one later as well, but Scott Boland's was a little bit more of a flyby, where Siraj's was like, no, if you stand in front of someone and yell at them, they're probably going to have a go back. But yeah, both of those players, I was just like, you've taken the wicket. Enjoy your life. I do think there's a little bit, I'm a Denver Nuggets fan, and, I follow, the greatest basketballer in the world plays for our team. And it's like, the other players are always harshly looked on because the gap between the best player and the second best player is so massive. And you look at that with Bumrah as well. It's like Siraj this morning bowls a good spell, right? He bowls a good spell, but he doesn't take any wickets. And suddenly the good spell is forgotten, right? And when Bumrah bowls a good spell, it's like, great spell. Didn't get any wickets there. He was unlucky. And it's like, that's what we start to do with these players. But it's really interesting anyway, from that point of view. What did you think of Marnus Labuschagne?
I think he gave it away. He had more runs for the taking. He looked even better than yesterday, I thought. Of course, batting.
I think he looked better than Head.
Wow. Okay, that's quite a statement. Why do you think that?
He was more in control. There was at no stage in the first whatever it was, 100 balls, was I thinking to myself, he looks like going out here. There was a couple of times where Head was in the wrong position, where he looked a little bit unsure of himself early on in his innings. And if you consider Marnus last night and tonight, he had the harder batting conditions, more of Bumrah, and I thought he looked really good. Whereas there were times where I was just like, oh, Head's going to get away with this. He's mishit this one, but it's over the top or whatever. I don't remember Marnus mishitting many balls. Like, everything seemed to come pretty much from the middle of the bat. Like, for me, I was sitting there going, this is like 100, and then suddenly a soft dismissal, really.
Yeah. Very, soft, and maybe good for Nitish Reddy, that he got a wicket. But for Head, isn't that how he's in most of his innings, or is it just because I have watched him a lot against India? And I just saw a stat today where Head has averaged across all formats since the last year some 62 or something against India and 37 against everyone else. So maybe I've just seen Head do this. Even in the World Cup final, he was edging a few, missing a few, and then he just came and belted it. So is that how Head is normally, or this was more jittery than normal?
No, I mean, you have innings where we've seen Head come out and he's looked like smashing a boundary from ball one, right? And what was he? I can't remember. Was he about 10 off 5 balls or something at one stage? You even look at some of the defensive shots, and he just wasn't quite always in the right position all the way through. Whereas Marnus looked like he was on wheels, right? Marnus looked like he was in a position where at any stage he was just going to be making runs. In the end, Head has the much bigger impact, and because of the way he batted, but he was also allowed to do that because of Marnus. So if I was Marnus, I'd be pretty annoyed that I did all the hard work here and stuffed up. And here's one for you. Do you think the hardest bowler in world cricket to defend is Scotty Boland?
I mean, looking at his spell to Virat Kohli, you have to say that. No, I don't know how he had the ball on a string. He was just so consistently testing him outside off stump, and then new pink ball under lights. I know that there's been questions asked about Kohli's game outside off stump, especially in the last few years when he's had a lean run. But this particular innings, I wouldn't, class with his other dismissals outside off, because this was just a very, very searching examination, and it would have been difficult to survive without luck, and I don't think Kohli had enough of the luck. I mean, luck would be you edge, it falls short, or it flies away, or you continuously play and miss. And he didn't have too much of that. It was like one with his name is going to come on it, and it did.
I can't think of a worse bowler at the moment for Kohli to play when he's getting the ball to move around. I mean, under lights and the pink ball and everything else, but it's like he was so in command of what he did. And he's really he's the king of LBWs, Scott Boland, right? Like, outside of Jasprit Bumrah, I think he has the highest percentage of LBWs in the world. But his skill and his ability to move that over and go, okay, not today, this guy I'm going to bowl out here. And so I looked at this. When you attack him, he's about... Oh wait, I've lost the stats in front of me. But I think when you attack Scott Boland, he is 20% worse than other seam bowlers, right? When you attack him, when you rotate, he's about 9% worse. When you defend him, he's 37% better than other seam bowlers.
So that's why I guess Rishabh Pant played the way he did. Although I have to tell you, I didn't like some of the unorthodox shots that Pant played. I mean, he played like a forward defensive at one point. What was that? We want him to be arching and, hitting over slips and doing all that. But I guess, on a serious note, I think that's probably why Pant attacked him, his first ball, and continued doing that. And even Nitish Reddy did that in the first innings too. Maybe the best way to play Scott Boland is to attack him. But Kohli, I know he scored the century in the previous test, and I think he looked really good while scoring it. But of course, it was easier batting conditions than now. I think he's not as sure of his attacking game early on in his innings, which is why I think he opted to play the patience game. But Scott Boland wins.
Who's going to make more runs in this series from here on out, Kohli or Smith?
Who's going to make more runs?
From here on out. So not in the series, because obviously Kohli has a big advantage, although you could say in the series as well. But from here on in.
So in the next 3 tests, who's going to make more runs? I'll go with Smith, because I think if Bumrah gets injured for even one of the tests, then Smith has a lot. And for Kohli, what happens if Boland drops, Hazelwood comes back? So what? I mean, if Boland gets dropped, if Hazelwood comes back, do they drop Boland? What will they do? Will they drop Boland? They have to, right?
They should drop Stark from the next test and play Boland, Hazelwood and Cummins, right? I mean, they should. But perhaps the least informed bowler at the moment is Cummins.
No, but
do you know what I mean?
So Cummins, yeah. Cummins is looking like he, at least in this innings, he was looking like the Cummins of old, didn't you think? Like in his first spell.
No, I thought at the end of the first innings as well. But if you're purely doing it on form, like Stark, you would say that probably, like, it's not easy. That's what happens when you've got one of the bowlers there. Look, they generally just get rid of Boland, so he will probably be moved on. All right, let's move on to tomorrow. Before we started recording, you were quite punchy, and you said that there would both batters from India would make double hundreds, and because of that, they would go on to win with a Bumrah 6-wicket haul. Are you willing to back that up here, or is that already gone?
No, of course, that's what's going to happen. You know, double century. Actually, it's too bad this isn't 21 years ago. You know, in December 2003, India were 85 for 4, and then Lakshman and Dravid got together and at this very ground and reeled off that partnership. So yeah, it's too bad and India were 81 for 4 and 86 for 4 in this test here. But yeah, so it's too bad it isn't 21 years ago. But see, we want really to. Don't you want to watch Rishabh Pant bat for as long as you can?
Oh yeah, it's not about that. But my bigger question for you is, what lead can Bumrah put a dent in? Because there's a couple of times against New Zealand where, was it the Bengaluru test where they had a lead of about 105, 110, and I was like, oh, maybe he could do something. And he bowled well, but he just couldn't really break through and didn't put any pressure back on New Zealand. Different conditions, and Siraj is in better form now, so you know it's being attacked from both ends. Hard to see how anything under 170 is realistic, but what's the score that if India managed to steal a decent enough lead that you'd be like, oh, maybe they could do this?
Actually, I was thinking of 200. So you're more optimistic than I am with 170.
Well, I'm factoring in the pink ball with that, I think. If it was a red ball, I'd be like 200. But I think, considering it's been a low-scoring game, I think 170, I think you give yourself a good chance with an Australian top order that's performed well once, but whether it's going to do it twice in a row, that means you get Head and Marsh potentially in early, and then who knows what happens next, right? And I can tell you one thing, Bumrah will not be underbowled in the second innings if they've got a chance of winning. Yeah.
I mean, I think just the difference that 170 and 200 causes in how the innings progresses, it's like, let's say Head and Marsh are in early, and Head gets a few away early, streakily or not. Marsh biffs a few. Then suddenly, when they're 70 for 4, chasing 170 is very different from 70 for 4 chasing 200. Like, I think India's entire approach is likely to go defensive a lot quicker, which is why 170 will be, I think, hard to defend. I think if they get 170, I see Australia winning by 4 or 5 wickets. If India get to a 200 lead, then it's game on.
Thank you very much, Saurabh. Well, we'll be back tomorrow, probably a little bit earlier than, one way or the other. If it's not earlier, then it's going to be a very huge turnaround for India, if that is the case. Saurabh Somani there, Jarrod, Kimber here. This is the Following On India podcast, and we're on the talkSPORT YouTube cricket channel. See you tomorrow.